Good evening, everyone. Good evening. So I'm coming to you live from my greenhouse today. It's a little chilly out here. But I wanted to see if I could, live stream from out here using all my technology. So far it's working. Hopefully I don't have any connection issues because I'm using hotspots and all types of stuff. Um, but I thank you guys for tuning in today. I will wait a few more minutes to allow people to connect to the live presentation. I know there's like a 10-second delay, so I'll just wait a few seconds. But yeah, it's kind of chilly out here. It was it was warm earlier today. The sun was out, but now it's cloudy. Um, my little thermometer here says it's 66 in here, so yeah, it's kind of chilly. Hey, Not Love. Hey, Kyra. All right, so today we're going to talk about victory gardens. We're going to explain what those are. People have never heard of that before. Um, it was a concept that was used back during wartime. Right now we're kind of in a war against the invisible monster, as they keep saying in the news. Um, COVID-19 has kind of disrupted a lot of things, not just jobs. Pretty soon it's going to be affecting the food, um, our availability and things. So these victory gardens are going to be needed. So with that being said, I'm going to stop the camera and we're going to switch over to this PowerPoint and we're going to get started talking about these victory gardens. And like always, if you have questions, you can ask them during the presentation. I'll try to answer them as best as I can, and when I see them pop up there. All right, so for those of you that have, just recently started following me, I just thought I'd do a brief introduction of who I am and what I do. My name is Nadia Ruffin. I have 2 degrees in agriculture. I have a bachelor's degree in agriculture from the Ohio State University. That was in animal sciences, and I minored in pre-veterinary medicine and also entomology. I have a master's of science in entomology. Entomology is the study of insects. I received that from the University of Nebraska. So I'm an entomologist. I'm a scientist in many different, you know, many different areas, not just, entomology, botany, plant pathology, um, computer technology, all types of things. I just kind of delve in anything. I'm a nerd, so I like a lot of different stuff. I'm a farmer. I'm an urban farmer, but I'm also going to get into actually farming some acres and things as well. I'm a researcher and also I'm an educator. Like right now on my YouTube and social media, I use it to actually educate people, but I also go into schools and things and I teach about the agriculture industry, which brings me to my business, which is Kiwi Produce. Kiwi Produce is a urban farm here. I started here in Cincinnati, and what I do is I purchase a empty lot and I farm on an empty lot, and I have bees there, I have chickens there. Speaking of chickens, we'll be talking about them tomorrow. So I'll be back out here with the chickens. I also started a nonprofit called Agri Academy Incorporated. That nonprofit, what I do is I do research, agricultural research, but also I go and do community outreach, and I teach youth and adults about the agricultural industry beyond just farming. A lot of times when people hear the word farm agriculture, they instantly think of farming, but there are so many different areas in agriculture that people can pursue that they don't really know about. Like I said, I'm an urban farmer. I grow things in soil as well as hydroponics, aquaponics. I also teach classes in hydroponics and aquaponics. I have bees and I have chickens, and I have a very dense background in veterinary medicine, as well as medical research. and also public health. I used to be a disease investigator, so that's why when we were talking about COVID-19 the last few weeks, um, you know, that's why I was talking about that. I used to be a disease investigator, so you know, tracking diseases is what I would have to. Okay, guys, I got kicked out. My it stopped connecting. So try this again. Okay, can you guys hear me? Hope you can. Saying that the mic is working. So we'll just start from here. I just had some technical difficulties. The actual computer disconnected from the internet. But what are victory gardens? So victory gardens, also called war gardens or food gardens for defense, were vegetable, fruit, and herb gardens planted at private residence and public parks. They were found in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, and Germany, and were, you know, used during the wartime, which was World War I and World War II. Rationing and shortage of agricultural workers, this began to affect the food supply. The reason they had shortage of agricultural workers because most of the men, going off to war. So what happened is, when you don't have agricultural workers, you don't have anybody actually farming and harvesting and things like that. So the food supply was being, put under suppression. So what the government did is that they encouraged citizens to actually grow their own gardens that they could use to feed their families and their communities. It was estimated that 9 to 10 million tons of vegetables, fruits and vegetables were produced during this time frame. So there were many campaigns to get people to garden. Gardens were considered a civil morale booster, and that the gardeners could feel empowered by their contributions of labor and rewarded by their produce grown. Victory gardens became just like an everyday part of life. So people used to grow their own produce. Um, and, they were actually supplying enough food to keep their communities, their homes, and things running, their cities and things like that. So it was very rewarding as well as it was very needed. If they had not done this, a lot of people would have starved. We were also during the time of the Great Depression and things like that. So people were having to actually fend for themselves at this point. Even though the propaganda, a lot of times you'll see these flyers and things that say victory gardens, and you'll always see, people of European descent. But in reality, everybody that was living here in the United States, they were, growing their own food, had their own victory gardens. It was, back during that time we had all types of racism going on, segregation and things like that. So a lot of demographics of people were excluded from a lot of the things that the government would, sponsor and things. So you would not see a lot of, people of color in pictures and things, but they were out there. And I was able to find a few on the internet. So there's one picture it was of a soldier. He's actually mixing up some chemicals to use as a pesticide on some of the plants in his victory garden. This was like a young girl. She was tending to her garden here. George Washington Carver, he was actually alive during this time, and he wrote a bulletin in the Tuskegee's agricultural. They had like a kind of like a monthly bulletin that would go out, and he actually talked about using nature as a victory garden And what he meant by that is actually going out and foraging and feeding on, some of the wild plants and things out there. Um, what, a lot of things that people were pushing was, to grow your own things, but there's a wealth of food and, resources available out in the wild that we could utilize. And so he did this whole bulletin where he explained about different plants that we could actually go and forage. And you can actually go. I'll put the link on the school website. You can go there and actually read the bulletin because he had all types of plants. He had drawn pictures. He didn't have actual camera back then, but he had drawn pictures and things um, to show you what the plants look like, where you would find them, and what their like their benefits were and things like that. So he had things like dandelions and burdock and all types of stuff. Um, so yeah, he was around during that time. There was a lot of scientists and things that were part of this Victory Garden campaign that you may not have known about. So what do these people have in their garden? So the Victory Gardens, they were growing all types of things. Some of the most popular produce grown were beans, beets, cabbage, carrots, kale, kohlrabi, lettuce, peas, tomatoes, turnips, squash, and Swiss chard. Um, they also had chickens. Some people were raising rabbits. Many of the households learned how to also can or use other food storage or preservation methods, so food would be available when it was during the off season. Surplus was also traded amongst neighbors, and I'm pretty sure there was also some, commerce going on where things were being sold back and forth amongst the people. So like I said, it really helped build a community. It helped, save a whole civilization of people because they were able to, grow their own food in their yards and, feed their families as well as their communities and, probably even make some money and things like that. So, you can start your own victory garden. Like I said in the beginning of this presentation, we're actually at war with a lot of things, not just COVID-19. Before COVID-19 came about, we had the tariffs with China, the tariff wars, the issues going on with Mexico. So, our food supply may be depleted or it may be, threatened because we're not trading with these countries that we used to trade with that we would get food and things from. Um, we get a lot of stuff from Mexico. So if those borders are closed, they're closed right now to an extent because of the COVID-19. But if those borders are not open back up or, if the government does things that will, further weaken those, those bonds between those two countries and things, we're not going to be able to get, certain things from these places. We still really can't trade with China. They're finally getting over the whole COVID-19, but now we have COVID-19, and I know people are not going to want, our people going back and forth trading and things like that. So we have to think about those things. Also, our economy, it could collapse at any point in time. We saw a few weeks ago how the stock market just tanked. They put all this money into it. It tanked again. It's been up and down, So our economy is always at risk. So with that being said, we don't have money. You can't buy things and things like that. So it's always that threat as well. But some benefits of actually having the victory gardens are you can the food is grown by you, so you know exactly what's on it. You know exactly who grew it, who harvested it, who processed it, and things like that. Looking at the food system that we have now, going to the grocery store, you never know what you're getting from the grocery store. It could be, the food could be old. You don't know what's been sprayed on it, who's handled it. You don't know, if it's contaminated with some type of microorganism that can make you sick and things like that. We've had all types of recalls and things. So, if you're growing your own, you know exactly when it was harvested, when it was processed, who processed it, who put what was put on it, things like that. So your food's going to be healthier. You're also harvesting it and you're using it right when you harvest it. Not, when you go to the grocery store, some of that stuff could be sitting there for months before it's actually put out for sale. Setting up a victory garden, it will provide activities for your entire family. It will make you more self-sufficient. It'll also be educational and mentally, spiritually rewarding. You know, when I started farming and getting back into nature and things, it was really, good for my mental health. At the time when I started, I was going through a lot of stuff. I was working at a place and things like that was very stressful. And I would come home and I would, go out and check my plants and, study the insects and things that were on it. So, it was very rewarding. It also reconnects you with nature, and your community. I know when I set up my urban farm here on the street, I have a lot of people now that when I'm out here, they'll stop and talk to me. And I know if I had not had it out here, they probably would have never stopped to talk and, have a conversation with me. And we talked about all types of different things, farming, their families, how their kids want to come see the chickens and all this stuff. So it can create a new, like a new community that I would have not, ever had, any contact with had I not set this up. It's also what our ancestors used to do. I mean, before grocery stores, our people used to grow their own food. Everybody's people used to grow their own food. That you were responsible for your well-being. So we have to just go back to what our ancestors used to do. They used to grow their own food. They were a lot healthier back then. They didn't have all this heart disease and diabetes and things that we have now. And a lot of that is attributed to the food and the things that are put in the food, the preservatives, the salt, the chemicals, the pesticides, and all that. That's what's having an effect on our health. All right, so let's get growing. So how do you set up your own victory garden? Well, first of all, you need to know what zone you live in. So how you find this out is you can go to this website, and I'll put this in the on the school website as well, this link. But it's the USDA Plant Hardiness Zone. So what you'll do is you'll go to the website and you'll put your zip code in, and it'll tell you what exact zone you live in. These zones tell you when your last frost. It gives you an estimate of when your last frost will be, and it also gives you an estimate of when your first frost will be in the fall. So I live in Ohio. I live in Cincinnati. I live in zone 6A, 6B. Cincinnati kind of falls in between both of them, depending on where you are. So knowing that information, I know that my frost the last frost should be sometime here in April. Weather has been weird lately, so everything's kind of iffy. But for the most part, by May, we don't really have any frost. The temperatures might get kind of cool, but we don't have any more threat of frost. And definitely by June, we are pretty much in the clear. And then I know, like, come September, early October, we're probably going to have our first frost for that fall winter. This information also tells you what plants can grow well in your area. So if you live like in zone 9A or B, which is like, Florida, the southern part of Florida, that's a tropical zone. So they can grow a lot of different plants that would never grow up here in 6A or 6B because, it's not a tropical region. So knowing what zone you live in, when you're going to purchase plants, that'll let you know, like, okay, I can't grow an orange tree up in zone 5, but I can grow one in zone 9 because that plant will grow in that particular environment. So when you go to like the stores or you go online and you go to purchase seeds and things or plants, they usually will say, what zone do you live in? And they'll also have where you can put your information in and it'll pull that zone up where you are. And it should pull up like all the plants that will grow well in your area. Also, when you go to like the nurseries in your communities, the nursery should have plants that do well in your area to begin with. So they should be stocking the plants that will actually grow in your region without any problems. I mean, sometimes they'll bring in things like citrus plants and things, but you have to know that you can't leave that stuff outside in the winter. You have to bring that in so it can overwinter in your home in the warmth, and then you put it back out when it's warm again the following year. So after you figure out what zone you are in, you need to ask your family, like, what are some of the items that you guys enjoy eating? You need to determine how much produce your family can reasonably consume during key harvest times, and how much, say, like if you're growing zucchini, how much zucchini your family really needs. Zucchini, well, I'll talk about some plants that are fast growing, but zucchini, you can literally have, once it starts flowering, and if it gets pollinated, you can literally have a zucchini the next day. So that plant grows very fast and it's very prolific, and it makes lots and lots of zucchini. You'll probably have more zucchini you ever wanted. You also want to know, like, how many plants you should plant of each plant. Like, if your family likes green beans, you might want to plant a lot of green beans. Or, if they like tomatoes, you might want to plant a lot of tomatoes. But if say like only one person in the house eats cucumbers, you don't want to plant a whole bunch of cucumbers unless you're going to find some other place for them to go. You also want to decide how you're going to go about storing any excess. Are you going to freeze it? Are you going to can it? If you don't know how to can, you need to try to find those classes or find someone to show you how to do that. If you're going to freeze it, make sure you have the freezer space available and things like that. Or if you're going to do some other preservations, like some people salt things and dry things and things like that, you got to make sure you have that equipment to do those types of things. Also, if you don't want to, store up a lot of it, you can also sell your surplus or trade it with your neighbors and things like that. So once you get into the selling aspect of it, no matter how big your garden is, you're considered farming now. And so if you make at least $1,000 from the produce that you're producing, you're considered a farm. So there's different types of gardens. I have a whole webinar I did about this. So this is just really skimming this all down. If you like to watch that webinar, you can purchase it on the school website for $10. But there's different types of gardens. So you have to decide what type of garden you want to have. But that also depends on the space that you have. So there's things like in-ground gardens. If you have like a big backyard or a big area that you can grow in, you can do raised beds. Say you don't have a yard, or say you have like a parking lot or something, you can use raised beds on that. If you live in an apartment, you can do container gardens. And then also, no matter what size of these things, you can also incorporate hydroponics and aquaponics. So in in-ground, soil can be tilled or it can be no-till. There's, lots of videos showing you how to do no-till gardens and things like that, or no-till farms. I don't do no-till. I actually till for many reasons. First of all, I have a lot of plants that grow on my urban farm, so I'm always constantly having to weed. So tilling actually helps with the weeding, especially at the end of the season and things. Also, tilling helps with, breaking insect cycles. A lot of insects will overwinter in the soil. So if you turn that soil over and you expose those eggs or those cocoons and things, you can actually control those insect populations by, exposing them to the cold, and they'll actually kill them. This is the easiest form of type of gardening, which is, the in-ground. It can be in a small or a large area, but it's very labor intensive. Like I said, you're going to have to till, you're going to have to weed, you're going to have to dig holes, all types of stuff. Weeding is going to be your biggest issue unless you use things like garden fabric or plastics and things. But then even that, you still have to lay that down. You have to plant the plants in it and things like that. So, like I said, this can be very labor intensive. You're going to have some equipment like a tiller. They have little manual tillers that you can use, but something that has gas power is probably going to be best. But tillers can be very strenuous on your body if you've never used one. Also, you're going to need lots of equipment, gloves, storage, all types of things. Also, you're going to have a water source. Also, if you have a lot and it needs to be cleared, say if there's trees or brushing on there, you're going to have to clear all that out before you can actually plant as well. So, like I said, this is the most labor-intensive one, but this is how, I grow on my urban farm. So say you have a backyard, but you don't want to go through that whole idea of, tilling the ground and things like that. You can actually do raised beds. Before I talk about raised bed, I have a few questions over here, so I'll answer these. So Kyra wants to know, if you are growing inside of the home apartment, can you please suggest what vegetables are best suited for indoor that are easy to take care of? All right, I'll talk about that when I get to the hydroponics. Basically, um, it's going to be dwarf plants, but you're going to have grow lights and things. You just can't use the sunlight in the window coming in the say in an apartment or something, because usually it's not enough light for that plant to actually survive. So you're going to have to incorporate grow lights and things into your indoor farm or garden. But I'll talk about that when I talk about hydroponics. So that's usually hydroponics is better for indoors um, than a lot of these other things, and I'll talk about that in a second. So raised beds, they are soil-filled beds built either by a multitude of different things. You can use bricks, tires, sticks. One thing you want to make sure though is that you are using products that are not going to leach any chemicals into your soil that you plant your plants in. When it comes to wood, you want to make sure it's heat treated wood and not chemical treated wood, because those chemicals will leach out of the wood and into your soil, and then your plants will absorb those chemicals. Raised beds, there's no digging or tilling. You will have to dig the holes to put the plants in the soil, but it's not like the in-ground growing. Usually you in your beds, you're going to put high quality soil. There are many types of plants that do well in raised beds. This method is less, it's less labor intensive, but there's still some work that has to be done. You have to build the bed, so you're going to have to, construct them. If you're going to use wood, or if you're going to use bricks or tires, you have to construct them. Then you have to bring in all this soil to fill them and things like that. This method is most commonly used in areas where there's poor soil or there's no soil at all, like say a parking lot, or if you have good soil, you just don't want to go through that whole process of tilling. You can always use raised beds in that areas as well. All right, so container gardens. These are very popular amongst people that live in small spaces like apartments and things, condos, or they don't have a backyard. They might just have a patio. So containers are filled with soil and plants are planted into those containers. There's no digging or tilling. There's virtually no weeding, but you can get weeds that grow in these beds over time. So the first year you probably won't have any weeds, but the second year, it's animals and insects and the wind blow seeds and things in the air. The seeds can fall down into your container, and then you can have like actual weeds grow in these, so you'll have to weed them out. Usually you put high quality soil. The best types of plants to put in these container gardens are the dwarf plants. So these are plants that'll stay small, but they still produce a lot of whatever you're trying to grow. So there's dwarf varieties for all types of plants. There's dwarf tomatoes, there's dwarf pepper plants. There's a few dwarf squash plants, but for the most part, squash plants are pretty big. They get pretty big, so they might have to be in their own container if you're deciding to grow those. But there's a lot of different type of dwarf type plants. Like I said, this method is used for people that live in that have limited space. So these are people that live in apartments or condos, or say like it's at an office and they have like a little spot out front that you can put it in a container. You can grow something in a container. These would do great for those type of environments. So last type of garden is hydroponics or aquaponics. So hydroponics or aquaponics is growing plants without the use of soil. They're actually grown in water. Hydroponics use nutrients. The nutrients are added to the water. They can be synthetic or natural source. Aquaponics, it's almost like hydroponics. It's almost like hydroponics in a sense, but instead of adding nutrients to that, what you're doing is adding fish, and you're actually letting fish live in water, and you're taking that water that the fish are living in. You're taking that water because it contains their waste, and you're using that waste from the fish to actually give nutrients to the plant. This could be done indoors or outdoors. This allows you to actually grow all year if you're growing indoors, or if you have like a greenhouse or something, you can actually grow all year long. Your plants are actually going to grow a lot faster in hydroponics than they would in soil. So I have some examples of some things I've grown in hydroponics. I've grown cucumbers, tomatoes, peppers, lettuce, collard greens, kale, all types of stuff. But with hydroponics, like I was saying earlier, if you're going to grow indoors, sorry about that, disconnected again. Okay, so as I was saying with hydroponics, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to use dwarf plants. These are plants that stay small, but they produce a lot of produce. So there's like dwarf tomatoes, dwarf peppers, all types of things like that that will stay in a condensed size, and so you're able to grow a lot of plants together, and you're able to produce them in a small space. So Kyra, you would ask what type of vegetables. So that would be any type of leafy greens, lettuce, kale, spinach, um, any type of leafy greens would do well. Now, when you get into things like tomatoes and uh, peppers and things like that, you're gonna have to go through hand pollination and all types of things. But you can grow those indoors. I've grown plenty of them. I've grown cucumbers. I've grown pepper plants. I've grown tomato plants. I've grown even okra indoors. So it can be done. Cat's tripping, keeps knocking stuff off the table. Sorry. But yeah, so you want to use dwarf plants. So Rose has another question. She wants to know, wouldn't the potted container gardens be good for people growing their first garden so that they can try a few at a time? Yes, that would work as well. I remember you had did that a few years ago when you were teaching potted garden classes. That would be great. Like you can put one plant in there, or put two plants in there that go together because they won't compete with each other. So yeah, those would be excellent to actually grow in potted plants, or even the raised beds if you want to go that route. Raised beds are just kind of like bigger container gardens. You just can't easily move them. But the container gardens, you can move them if you have to. They can sit on a porch. They can also, sit on a balcony and things like that. What you're going to have to realize, though, is that you're going to have light, and you're going to have, be able to water the plants. You got to make sure that you have the right type of light. You want to make sure wherever you're sitting them, that it's like a south-facing window or south-facing area, so they're getting direct sunlight. Um, you also need to know what you're growing. Some plants like a lot of sun all day, and some plants don't. So you need to know exactly what you're growing. You need to research the plant and things before you start uh, growing them. All right, Kyra said, thank you, Nadia. Can you suggest the best potting soil to use? Yes, I was. If you have a Menards there, I don't know if you have that particular hardware store. They sell something called Pro Mix. That's what I always use to start my plants. It's Pro Mix, and I've grown them out into maturity, even in that same type of soil. If you don't have Pro Mix, it's any type of organic rich soil that you can purchase at the store. You'll want to have something. It's either mixed in with compost, and it has fertilizers and things in there that are of a natural source. So that could be like manure and things like that. You don't want to get Miracle Grow. That is that's not, if you're trying to grow like organically or naturally. Miracle Grow is not going to be the thing you want to use. Reason being, they add a lot of synthetic chemicals and things and growth hormones to those to the Miracle Grow to get the plants to grow very big, but it's not going to be organic because it's not going to be organic because those chemicals are in there. All right, so Kyra wants to know, what if your house tends to be damp, hold moisture? Would that affect the plant's ability to grow? Plants actually like humid environments, so you might be okay, but you might have issues with fungi growing in the soil as well as on the plant. So you just have to be mindful of that. Um, the issue that you'll have with your plants is that if it's not warm in there, that could stunt growth or slow down growth. Plants, they like it kind of warm, unless it's like things like spinach and brassica plants, which are things like cabbage and kale and collards. They can tolerate cooler temperatures. Things like cilantro can tolerate cooler temperatures, but things like tomatoes and peppers and okra and all that types of stuff, they like hot. Things like watermelon, they like hot temperatures. So you have to, like I said, you're gonna have to research what you're trying to grow. I have a few classes where I've taught about different produce. They're on the school website. I have some videos and things. If you'd like to purchase those classes, you can visit that school website. I'll put the link up in a minute. High sunshine, so determined. Let's see here. Jess Ankrum wants to know, how do you make a homemade nutrition solution for the hydroponics to add the water instead of buying it in stores? Are you asking like what chemicals? Are you asking, because at the end, whether it's synthetic or it's natural, like nitrogen is nitrogen. No matter the source, at the end, it's still going to be inorganic. Phosphorus is phosphorus. That's inorganic. Things like that. You can make like compost teas and things, and you can incorporate that into your hydroponics. But what you're going to have to do is you're going to make sure you aerate that, because you have those microorganisms growing in there, and if you do not have oxygen in that water, it'll turn anaerobic, and then you'll get those nasty, stinky bacteria growing that can actually kill your plants and things. So, I mean, you can make compost teas from like worm castings or, from your compost and things like that. But you're going to have to add that aeration in there to keep the anaerobic bacteria from growing. Kyra said, thank you for excellent advice. You're welcome. It's Miracle Grow from Monsanto. So yes and no. It's inadvertently through Monsanto, because Scott Company, they actually are part of Monsanto, but they're the ones that actually produce it. They partnered with Monsanto some years ago, but they make it. But yeah, it is kind of part of the Monsanto whole regime. All right, Rose Black wants to know, what about herbs and spices? My sister gave me a rosemary bush for a Christmas tree about 5 years ago. I have had it one. I had one every year ever since. Ever since. Good for a lot of different tasty meals. Yes, you can grow your own herbs. Again, they'll still fall like under leafy greens and things like that. So cilantro, um, basil, um, rosemary, thyme, all that stuff. All those are herbs, and yes, you can grow those. You can grow those outdoors. You can grow those indoors. And you can grow those in hydroponics and aquaponics too. So sky's the limit. I know every time when I talk about hydroponics, people only assume that you can grow, like marijuana, cannabis plants. But hydroponics is used for a lot of plants. You eat hydroponic stuff all the time, especially when you go to the grocery store. Tomatoes and peppers and a lot of the lettuce is already grown hydroponically. So you're eating hydroponic food already. Um, like I said, you can grow these things in your home or in your yard and things yourselves, even if you wanted to get into that whole hydroponics aspect. And like I said, your stuff will be a lot healthier because it won't be where it's been sitting out or had stuff sprayed all over and all that stuff. Let's see here, any more questions? Okay. All right. So how do you get started? Well, you can either start from seeds indoors or you can buy transplants. If you're going to start seeds, you're going to have to buy some soil. So I already talked about the Pro Mix. If you can't find Pro Mix, then you want to find some organic soil that they sell at either at your nursery or your, um, uh, the department stores and things like that. Do not get Miracle Grow. You do not ever start seeds in Miracle Grow. It's too much nitrogen in there. It'll actually burn them. So you want to start with something just organic, simple, but it's still rich to give the plant the nutrients that it needs. Now, as the plant grows, you're probably going to have to incorporate some type of fertilizer. And so there's things available that you can purchase, all types of organic fertilizers from all different types of sources, whether it be from animals or, from plants, as well as, worm castings and things like that. But if you're going to start your own seeds, you're going to have some soil. You're going to have containers to start your seeds in. You're going to have labels, the seeds themselves, a grow light, and then you have to just be patient. We live in a society now where everybody wants everything like instantly. Well, when it comes to growing plants, you're going to have some patience because they're going to grow in their own time. It doesn't matter how you try to rush them; they're still going to grow in their own time. Even with the hydroponics, I can get accelerated growth. Like, I was growing one year, I had some cucumbers I was growing, and it was going to take, if I would have grew them in the soil, it was going to take 70 days almost to get them to maturity. And I grew them in the hydroponics, and it only took 30 days. But it still took a month to get the plant from seed to where it was flowering and actually producing fruit. So it still takes time. With lettuce, you can grow lettuce in, like a month as well. But like I said, it's going to take time and just take patience. And then you have to kind of know what you're doing. You got to make sure you're watering the plants correctly, giving them the nutrients when they need them, giving them light and things, because if you don't, they can't carry out their biological processes. So if you don't want to go the seed route, this would be the time to start seeds right now. But if you don't want to go that seed route, you can actually go and purchase started plants from nurseries. You can purchase them from places like Walmart, Home Depot. They have started plants in there. So they are available. They usually start putting out the started vegetable plants usually in late April, sometimes early May. Up here in Ohio, it may be a lot sooner if you live in a place that's already pretty much warm. If you live in zone 7 or 8 or 9, they might have plants already out. So also you're going to need some supplies depending on what method you're deciding to grow your plants. You're going to need, things like shovels, gloves, rakes, tools, nails if you're going to build beds. You're going to need growing supplies. So that means you're going to need, if you're going to do an irrigation system, you're going to have to purchase that. Or if you're going to store rainwater, you got to have some type of mechanism that can capture that water and things like that. It's going to have hose. You'll have to have what else? A tiller if you're going to go tilling route, or a tractor if you've got really big space. If you're going to do hydroponics, you got to have the setups, you got to have the nutrients, and then of course you got to have the plants. Now, if you're going to go and get into the whole animal aspect, we'll talk about that in a second. You got to have cages for the livestock, pens and things, and you got to make sure you have the personal protective equipment. So you're going outside, you want to make sure that you're being protected. If you're like using like heavy machinery, you want to make sure you have earplugs in or goggles on. If you're cutting down things and things are flying around, like if you have a weeder or something, you want to make sure you have those goggles and things to protect your eyes. All right, so some plants you can easily grow in one season. I know people always want to ask, they always ask me, like, what can I grow? What's easy to grow? Well, to me, it's all easy to grow, but there are some things that will actually grow within one grow season. So those things like nightshades, which are tomatoes, white potatoes, eggplant, peppers, cucurbits are squash plants. So that's like cucumbers, zucchini, yellow squash, pumpkin, spaghetti squash, acorn squash, butternut squash, all of that, watermelons and cantaloupes, they all fall under that cucurbit family. They'll all grow in 1 year. Allium, which are onions, and garlic. If you start onions and garlic now, they will. You can get a harvest of them now. But usually, you want to plant garlic in the fall, and you want to harvest it the following summer. But you can still plant it in the spring of the following year, and it'll still grow, just be a lot smaller, but you'll still be able to harvest it. You also can grow leafy greens, things like lettuce, Swiss chard, spinach, brassica plants, which are your collards, your kale, broccoli, turnips, radishes, and things like that. You can grow strawberries, you can grow okra, sweet potatoes. Some grains that you can grow are corn, quinoa, as well as wheat. Then there's beans you can grow, and herbs. I'm gonna upload this live. Yeah, I mean it's gonna be live on. It's still gonna be on my YouTube, so you can still watch it on YouTube. But I'll also put it on the school website. I'll just put a link to the YouTube page for the video. So if you want to grow plants and you also want to incorporate some other stuff, you can incorporate bees into your operation. You can incorporate chickens. Chickens are excellent sources of eggs as well as meat. They also help, with things like you can use their waste to make fertilizers for your plants. You would have to let the stuff compost first, but chicken manure is a highly sought after product. And so, like I said, you have to let it compost first to burn off some of that nitrogen, because if you use chicken manure immediately out of the chicken and you don't let it compost, you run risk of two things. Number one, infecting yourself with some type of microorganism that can make you very sick, or you will end up burning your plants with the nitrogen. Their manures is highly nitrous. It has a lot of nitrogen in it, and so you don't want your plants in that type of level of nitrogen, because it can burn the plants. If you don't want to do chickens, or say you do want to do chickens, you can also do rabbits. Rabbits are small animals and they reproduce very quickly, and you can keep them in a small space, and people use rabbits for meat. You could also raise your own fish. Like I was talking about the aquaponics, but if you don't even want to grow the plants, you can do what is called aquaculture, where you can raise your own fish. So there's a number of fish that you can raise. Tilapia is one, as well as catfish, bluegills, all types of fish you can grow, and raise in your gardens, or if you have farms and things. Quail, they're another type of poultry. They're a small bird, but you can raise them for eggs and or meat. You can also grow your own mushrooms. You can also grow your own fruit trees. So these are things that are like the vines, the bushes, and the trees. Things like blueberries, grapes, peaches, things like that. These are not going to grow in a year though. These are going to take, minimum 2-3 years. Some plants can take, 5 to 10 years before they actually start producing fruit. Also, in some areas you're allowed to have goats. So you can raise goats for meat, and you can also raise them for milk. So Sunshine So Determined said, I'm not sure if you are only covering the topic on only hydroponics, aquaponics, but I have a question. I use ginger a lot in many ways and would like to grow some. How would you go about growing that? You can actually grow that in a type of modified hydroponics. It's called sub irrigation. I'll send you some information about that. Just send me an email. I'll put my email in the box here. But you can grow that. You can grow ginger as well as turmeric in hydroponics, but it's a modified system. But it takes the plant a long time to grow. It has like a 6 to 9 month growing cycle before you can actually go and harvest. So if you live in an area that gets cold, you probably gonna have to bring it in because it's kind of a tropical plant. Then you had, let's see, also, does your school have videos on how to save dry seeds from fruit? I have eaten as opposed to purchasing seeds. I don't have a video of that. I can show you how to do that. It depends on what kind of seed you're trying to save. There's different methods depending on the seed. All right, so when it comes to your garden, you need to do a layout. So that means you need to, kind of sketch up how you want your garden to look, even if it's a container, you can still lay it out. Just get you used to laying out how you want your plants to actually, you know, be set up. So you want to draw a layout of how you want your garden to be set up. You want to plan out your plant schedule the watering, the weeding, harvesting, and things like that. You can delegate tasks to family members so everyone can participate in the gardening. And I want you guys to have your children also participate in this. This should be a family affair, not just the adults or not just one person in the household. Uh, everyone should be partaking in this because everyone's going to benefit from it in so many different ways. They're going to benefit educationally as well as nutritionally, all types of things. So you want to make sure everybody has a role in it. Even a little tiny kids, they can help dig a hole or come outside when it's time to harvest the plants and they can harvest the tomatoes or something like that. But everybody needs to be involved with this for it to be successful. You also want to keep good records on when things were planted so that you have a good idea of when to harvest. Um, you also want to plant polycultures gardens, and they are way better than monoculture. So that means you want to have plant diversity. You don't want to just plant one type of plant. You want to have a diverse garden. The reason being, plant diversity, it makes for healthier plants, but it also will attract things that are beneficial to your garden, like beneficial insects and things, so they can actually help you fight things that are maybe feeding on your plants. So if you only have one type of crop, what's going to happen is that those pest insects may come in, but then the insects that may, feed on those pests, they're not going to come in because you don't have maybe a plant that their larvae may feed on or they like use for a nest or things like that. So you want to have diversity. You also want to organically control insects and other arthropods, and you want to set up fencing if possible to keep out wildlife. I know here on my urban farm, I have fencing around. I still have problems with wildlife. I have problems with groundhogs coming in as well as deer, and those types of things will wipe your plants out. Also, with wildlife, sometimes they can bring in, diseases and things. So you want to make sure that you're keeping wildlife out. You're keeping, people out that are not part of part of that operation, as well as all types of things. You want to just make sure that you're keeping your garden safe, because things can bring in, pathogens, insects, and all types of things that can wipe your plants and things out. So you want to make sure you have a good biosecurity on your garden. So one more thing, if you're growing plants like tomatoes, peppers, squash plants, eggplant, okra, all these plants are going to actually flower, and a lot of them are going to have to be pollinated by some type of pollinator, but some of them are also self-pollinating, but they still would have to have a pollinator come in and shake the pollen down onto the female part of the plant or the flowers and things. Things like corn, um, those are wind pollinated, so you're going to have wind and things to help drop that pollen. But if you're not experiencing wind, or if you don't have pollinators available, you can always go in and hand pollinate. So hand pollination, it involves taking pollen from the male flower and putting it on the female flower. So I have some pictures here, and I'll put the bigger picture so you guys can see it up close of what the female flowers look like on certain plants. So I have a watermelon here. I have zucchini. I have what is that? Cantaloupe. I have is that a cantaloupe? Yeah, that's a cantaloupe. I have cucumber. I have pumpkin. I have squash. So usually the female flowers have a little fruit behind the flower, so that's how you know it's a female flower. Well, the male flower usually has just like a long, skinny stem. There's no fruit behind that. So you would take pollen from the male flower and you would transfer it to the female flowers. A lot of these plants, the flowers are only open up at certain times during the day. Is usually early morning to about noon, and things like zucchini and other squash plants, the flowers will actually close up after that time frame. So if you're going to have to hand pollinate, you probably want to make sure you're up when the flowers are open so you can actually hand pollinate them. And one last thing, you want to make sure that you actually enjoy the fruits of your labor. You can eat the fruit that you grow. I used to have people that come up to me and they say, "Oh yeah, I grew a garden, but I threw everything away." And I was like, "Why did you do that?" And they was like, "Oh, I didn't know if I could eat it or not. I didn't know if it was safe." And I was like, "Well, why did you grow it then?" Like they would say things like, "Well, I didn't. Nobody ever told me if it was safe or not, and it didn't come from the grocery store, so I just threw it away." So you don't want to do that. If you're growing something, you want to enjoy it. You want to, like I said, you want to get the kids involved too, because usually children that grow their fruits and vegetables, they will actually eat their fruits and vegetables. So you want to make sure everybody's involved with this process. You want to look up recipes and use them on the produce that you grow. You also may want to trade with your neighbors and things like that. And also, if you have a surplus, you can also go and sell it. So, I mean, enjoy the fruits of your labor. Have a plan of what you intend to do with it. Yes, you're going to eat it, but what if I have too many zucchini? What am I going to do with all this zucchini? I'm going to make zucchini bread. Do I want to sell the zucchini bread, or do I just want to give the zucchini away to my friends and family and things like that? So have a plan of how you're going to, enjoy the things that you actually grown. So in conclusion, victory gardens are need to make a comeback, and you can grow your own food. I'm gonna talk about the school website real quick. This is the link to it. It's kiwiproduce.farm/school. This is where I put all of the information from these discussions that I have on Sunday. I have a whole link where you can go there and you can go and find like the articles and things that I use to make it, as well as any links that I feel is important. So I haven't put this one up yet, but I'll put it up this evening, and I'll put all the links and things that I talked about, as like the USDA zones and all that on there, so you guys can follow that. There's other classes on there, and things coming up that I have on there as well. Also, if you guys, if the school website, the videos and things are not helping, I have other videos on other social media accounts where I've grown things and or I've showed you how to do things. If that's still not helpful enough, I also consultations They're $35 an hour, and I can do those via Skype. If you're here in Cincinnati, I can come to your location. If you're trying to set up a garden and things, and I can come and tell you what is needed um, based off what you have, like what I suggest you would set up and things like that. So does anybody else have any other questions? Here's my contact information. I put my email in the comments, but here's my website and the school website, and then my email if you want to contact me if you have any questions about urban farming or entomology questions and things like that. I do have a phone number, but it's hard for me to a lot of times during the day actually talk on the phone, so it's easier for me to respond to an email or to a direct message or something on one of the social media sites. So Sunshine said, so determined. She said, okay, thank you so much for the information. You're welcome. Kyra said, thank you for sharing and doing all of these live videos. You're welcome. Does anybody else have any questions? Has anybody started their gardens? I started some plants. I wanted to show you guys some things before I got out of here. Hold on. Switch to the camera. Oh. So I have these are called plug trays. So I have right here, I have collard plants. There's about 500 of them in this plug tray. But basically what you do, you can start a whole bunch of plant in plug trays, and then when they grow to a certain size, you can pop them out and you can replant them into bigger pots before you transplant them, or you can just transplant them directly into where they're going to go if it's warm enough outside to do that. I also wanted to show you some things you probably want to purchase, especially if you're going to start from seed. You want to purchase one of these seed heat mats. This is especially important if you're trying to grow things like pepper plants. They have a high temperature that they actually germinate at. It germinates about 90 degrees, and a lot of times people's houses are not that hot. And if you don't have it under the grow light, and or if your grow light doesn't get off a lot of heat, say you have LED lights, they don't give off a lot of heat versus fluorescents do. You kind of want to get one of these mats so that you can get those plants to germinate in like a week instead of versus if the temperature's not right, it could take up to a month or so before they will actually germinate, or they may not ever germinate because the temperature's just not right. But this particular mat, I got this off Amazon. It was about $20. That's about the going price for this size. They have some bigger ones, but they're a lot more expensive. Than they have some that have like temperature on them that you can regulate the temperature. But you don't have to just use it for pepper plants. Plant lettuce, peppers, petunia, squash, tomatoes. So you can use that to sprout a lot of plants. And with sprouting plants, you also want to make sure that you have, a tray. So they have these trays here. So the trays, make sure they don't have holes in the bottom of them. I bought a whole box of these trays once. I have like 100 of these that have the holes in them, so it doesn't hold any water. The best thing is to get the trays with no holes so you can put some water in here and you can sub-irrigate your plants instead of pouring the water on top. When you pour the water on top, what happens is you cause fungi and as well as algae to grow on the surface of the soil. And that fungus and things can attract things like fungus gnats and all that, and you don't want to have to deal with that. You also want to make sure you get the humidity dome to put on top of here. This creates humidity inside of here so that the plants, the seeds that are germinating, they need humidity, they need moisture, they need light. and they need heat to actually get them to germinate. So you got to make sure you have all those elements so that the plant seeds can actually germinate properly. And then you can get these little seed tray inserts as your plants get bigger. You can put them in here. So these are some pepper plants that I had started actually last week. So they actually germinated already. These are going to be habanero peppers. But you get these inserts and you can sit them down in the black trays, and you can, like I say, sub-irrigate the tray. And what happens is the water will be sucked up in the bottom of it instead of pouring it on the top. And then you don't want your soil and your seed to be soggy. You just want it moist. If it's soggy, you're going to have problems with eventually root rot and things like that. So just be mindful of that. Dang, I forgot the other stuff I was going to bring out here. I was going to show you guys some onion sets and things like that. I might just do a whole nother video next week about onions and garlic and stuff, since it's the time that you need to start that, like right now. So Shaw B said Aldi's have a greenhouse for sale. Would that be a good investment for an apartment patio? I don't know the Aldi's greenhouse. I know those greenhouses they usually sell at like places like oh, it's usually like at Walmart and stuff. They have like these little greenhouses and they have like a plastic cover and things. They're okay, but what happens is the wind takes those and they just throw them around. You would have to set it up to where you would have to add all these other things to keep it from blowing away and all that. So I wouldn't set it up outside. Maybe if you set it up indoors and you put like a grow light in there, that might work. It'd be okay because it'll create that humidity and stuff that you need. But buying those, I bought one and I had all these trays in there, and a little breeze came through and it just picked it up and just threw everything everywhere. I was so upset. So then I went and got this bigger greenhouse. This has been a work in progress over the last 5 years. I finally got it up, but it actually has poles and things that go down into the ground. It's a real hoop house, so you might want to invest in that. Oh, well, you can't really do that in an apartment. But if you have like a yard or something, you may want to invest into a hoop house. It'll actually allow you to extend your season. And if you start adding things into it like heaters and stuff, you can actually extend your season into the next season. So think about that. Nah, Love said, I'm so glad you are sharing your knowledge. Oh, you're welcome. Horn Farm said, I tried to order Egyptian walking onions, but they cannot deliver to Florida. I think they won't come to Florida because I think they are an invasive species, so they don't want those there. Now, Love says she wants to build her own hoop house. You can build one out of PVC. I've seen people do that. The best thing to do is just go on eBay. There's some people that sell them on eBay. That's where I got this one from. They sell the poles and stuff already bent, and you can purchase them that way. And then now you have to like buy the lumber and things that help hold the poles together. But that's probably gonna be your best route, because if you try to go and buy the poles and then try to bend them and all that, it's gonna be more work than what you probably want to do. But like I said, I've seen some videos where people have made hoop houses out of PVC, so that's an option too. You just go on YouTube and type in PVC greenhouses, and people show you how they built them. Again, that's a stability thing. You got to make sure that the PVC is thin enough to where you can bend it, but also strong enough to withstand a storm or snow and things like that. All right, so I am about to get on out of here because I'm freezing now. If you have any questions, you can send me an email. I put my email in the comments, or you can send me a message if you're following me on the other social media sites. Um, Send me a direct message or whatever the different messages systems are, or you can put it in the comments of this YouTube video once it uploads onto YouTube. And like I say, just get at me if you have any questions. And Son of Sunshine said before I get out of here, it was a pleasure watching your live, Nadia. I love your content on IG. Keep up the wonderful work. We appreciate you. Great night. You too. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm glad you guys follow me. Share these videos with your friends, family, especially if they want to get into gardening or, all the other stuff I talked about. If you know somebody that can benefit from that information, please share it with them so I can build my community. But I'm going to get out of here because I'm freezing. Um, and I got to pack all this stuff up. So I will talk with you guys later. Actually, I'll be back tomorrow at noon talking about chickens. Then on Tuesday, I'll be talking about cicadas. And then on Wednesday, I'll be talking about eggs. So please try to tune in if you can tomorrow. I know most of us are still on isolation, so it gives you something to do during the day. All right, guys. Talk with you later. Have a good night.